Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the March monthly PMI event. It's a pleasure to have you here. Can I first start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which we meet on today, the honourable people, and pay respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. I also extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who may be here tonight.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure tonight to welcome Michael Hawkins. Before I do, I'm just going through tonight, so we'll have our presentation for about 45 minutes. There'll be about a 15-minute opportunity. There'll be about a 15-minute opportunity to do chapter updates. So I do know we have a few members of the board here, and again, I thank you for your attendance. So an opportunity if you wanted to provide anything, both to those online watching the recording or here tonight. And the bar will reopen, so we'll have networking afterwards as well. The bar will reopen from about 8 o'clock, 8:15. So please keep that in mind. So let me tell you a bit about Michael Hawkins. So Michael has over 40 years experience within the ICT industry, with more than 30 years in management roles, including serving as an elected non-executive director of the Australian Computer Society and a director of Australia PMI Canberra. Woo. He has managed diverse people from many project teams, technical engineering teams, and multinational teams across 10 countries during his role as a general manager for an international software company. He brings his experience and knowledge from his career and his coaching business to these engagements with the goal to enhance clients' lives and through them, their staff and teams. Scrolling down. Find the mouse. Michael is a professional coach, mentor, facilitator, and trainer. He is an accredited Level 2 consultant and trainer of Extended Disc and eDisc, and a Meta Dynamics Level 2 practitioner. He's also an associate member of the International Coaching Guild, a chartered manager and member of the Chartered Management Institute UK, a fellow and certified practicing manager of the Institute of Managers and Leaders, and a certified professional and honorary life member of the ACS, Australian Computer Society. Tonight, Michael will be talking about Decode Your Stakeholders, outstanding outcomes in 3 parts. Without further ado, welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Obviously, I don't have a life. You sort of have all of those things that I've got to remove from my bio. Funny story. So we did have another presenter who was going to speak this month, and they had to pull out. And Nathan said, "Anyone else can do a talk?" And I said, "Yeah, I can talk." And Nathan said, "What would you talk on?" I said, "Oh, something around stakeholders and communication." Hence the title that was in the ad, which was Stakeholder Management and Communication. He didn't give me an opportunity to give him a real title, but I changed it to Decoding of Stakeholders. And the reason I've done that is for a number of things, but one of the things that I've found, if I've been talking to in particular graduate and postgrad students who are studying project management, engineering and other things, and having a chat, and the biggest fear that they have is having to communicate with other people. And here's the people we're pushing out into the marketplace that are there and having to deal with a range of different people and never been trained in how to do that. And I'm sure some people in the room might feel a similar way. So, who here, and this is the exercise where I expect interaction, raise your hand if you've had a tough conversation and dreaded it. If you don't put your hand up, then look, we need to hire these people because they're experts at dealing with people. How about, there we go, come away from a project conversation and felt that it went absolutely nowhere. You must all put your hand up there, right?
But don't people make money from that?
If you went to the back four,
you couldn't do it again, right?
No, some people do it all the time. How about ever felt your clients were on the same journey as you? Maybe they're even on a different planet.
I used to.
Right? So, would you like to be able to take control of your conversations to drive outstanding outcomes?
Definitely.
And this is what decoding your stakeholders is all about. And so I've talked about three parts to this, and we'll go through them in a fairly high level. I could speak for days on this and go through exercises and all sorts of stuff. But I'm trying to keep it down so that we can actually get back out for drinks at 8 o'clock. Please be fully interactive, ask questions, challenge me, whatever. I'm not perfect. Some people might say it, but I'm not. And happy to take conversation and drive it that way. So we might end up skip a few slides, but that's a good thing, right? We don't want to death by PowerPoint. So as a project manager, I would ask the question like, who are your stakeholders? And the answer's already on the screen. Some people, in particular when in some training and things, you see people who are the junior project managers and have a chat, and they only ever think that the stakeholder is these people above. You know, the project owners, the sponsors, the steering committee, they're the stakeholders. But in reality, I saw a quote the other day that said project management is 90% communication. It's all about building those relationships and managing the relationships to ensure you get the outcomes that you're trying to achieve in the project. And to do that, you have to communicate. You've got to treat everyone as a stakeholder. So it's not just the owners and those people and the executives, but it's your project team. Being able to interact and manage the project team, understanding each individual member, what drives them, what doesn't, having that sort of information, being able to pick up and do those sort of things makes a very powerful and valuable project manager. Managing, you've got peers as well, as people that you report to, fellow project managers in the sort of program team and things. And of course, project management office, there's someone else that needs to be a stakeholder because they have their requirements, and you've got to be able to interact and work with them and manage that relationship. So everyone that we deal with as a project manager is really a stakeholder and should be treated as such. Is there a question?
No.
Okay. Anyone disagree?
Well, it's just one of the stakeholders.
Community?
Yes, it can be. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm just trying to keep it within the project space, but there are often times when your project has community engagement and things as stakeholders. So I did do a
taxpayer.
Yes, well, I did a project for Libraries ACT a number of years ago where they replaced their core business system, which is the library management, the cataloguing, checking in, checking out, replaced all of their RFID hardware all in one go, which was major for them because it was a completely different vendor. All the staff needed to be retrained, all that sort of stuff. But also, the public make a lot of use of the 10 sites where the libraries exist here in Canberra. Physical 10 libraries, yeah. That any disruption, and I wish I had a camera some days to see, where pensioners come up and they want to return a book and the return chute is not working and they're trying and it doesn't work and they get very aggravated and they walk inside and they throw the book at the library. So yes, community can be important too. Yeah. This is a bit old now, it's 2021. I do have a look every year just to see if anything's changed with regards to the top 10 reasons why projects fail. And normally I might ask the room to get you to contribute and whiteboard and do all that sort of stuff. I'm saving some time tonight. So, in 2021, the order changes, but the names tend not to. Scope creep makes sense, right? That can cause a failure in the project. Over-allocated or limited resources, unavailable resources. Poor communication, number 3. Bad stakeholder engagement, number 4. Unreliable estimates. And really, if you think about it, whilst we call out, I've even got a little laser thing, it doesn't work on this. Poor communications here, what do you think is the underlying cause for bad stakeholder engagement? Poor communication.
Number 3.
What about unreliable estimates? Communication, in a way. If you're not asking the right questions, if you're not following through and making sure and checking these things, to be able to do a proper estimates and check them, scope creep again, that interaction. So communication skills are very important in everything that we do. Back to that quote from before. There we go. So, 3 parts. What I present to you is that basically, number 1, you need to know you. You need to know yourself. You need to understand you. understand your natural approach to things, how you make decisions, why you make decisions a certain way, what you love and hate about detail and process and those sorts of things, right? So your not personality, but deeper, your behaviours are very important and very powerful when you can learn those things. And there are instruments out there. So I use Extended Disc as a behavioural profiling tool. You've got Myers-Briggs as a personality tool and various others that are there.
Sorry, what's DISC stand for?
DISC. Dominance, influence, that's good. Thanks, Sam.
Subordination?
No.
Security and compliance.
Yeah, correct.
Stability and
Stability.
Yeah, stability and compliance.
Yeah.
It depends on the vendor, right? Each vendor who does DISC will change the name slightly. Red, blue, green, and yellow. Does that help?
Okay, yes.
The Herman Index.
Yeah, and so it all comes from, step aside and we'll talk about this, all comes from Carl Jung and work that he did in analysing and observing people and their behaviour, and he worked out that he could actually pigeonhole people at 16 different groups originally, and then he refined it a bit. And then later on there was this guy who invented Wonder Woman, right? Professor Marsden, back in the 30s, where he got into this research from Jung and he broke it down into 4 groups, and this is where DISC comes from. He's the inventor of DISC. And one of the things he found was there are certain characteristics for each of the 4 where you can put people, and you'll sit somewhere in that. But he was not seeing females in the very direct, dominant space in America in that time, and he invented Wonder Woman as his sort of ideal female that would sit in that dominance square. And then, of course, it picked up as a comic, and the rest is history. So when you understand traits about yourself and how we work as humans, that gives you an edge then to be able to go forward and start to work with other people. One of the things I found in helping people really understand why they make the decisions they do and think the way they do in their processes and so on, is that all of a sudden they have a realisation that other people are different from me. Now I understand why I struggle to talk with that person, and I can't understand what they're saying, and they can never give me what I need to do my job. This is the sort of stuff that you start to have. And this is a skill that's been dropped out of any sort of education we have in schools. You don't have this natural communication anymore. And of course, we're going down the path of removing all sort of human interaction from the next generations at the moment, where we're just dominated by online and devices, where you don't have to look someone in the eye to have a conversation. And that's a normal, happy conversation, let alone a difficult conversation. When you get into the workplace, we know as project managers, there are often difficult conversations that must be had. And so there's a human nature skill that we're just losing. So, can go into this in a lot of detail. This is the part or an extract of the NLP mode of communication, neuro-linguistic programming. So one of the other things that I've done. But basically our brain and the way it works, and you would have probably heard this in one way or another before, when we're processing something, we've got our senses, and there's over 3 billion bits of information that come into our brain every second. And you go, nah, rubbish. Not true, it's there. 3 billion bits of information coming in. Because one of the things that the brain does is it deletes, distorts and generalises based on a whole pile of things, which I won't go into detail here, but basically past experience and knowledge and how you're feeling at the time and all sorts of stuff. So for example, delete. Your brain automatically will concentrate on processing those bits of information out of the 3 billion bits that are relevant to what you're doing right now. So up until this point where I say, you don't feel your bottom sitting on the chair. Now you do. Because I just focused you on that and your brain went straight there. And now you're thinking, oh yeah, it feels comfortable, or actually really uncomfortable, or I'm getting a bit falling asleep. That's what the brain is doing all the time. And we've got to be aware of that, because in conversations, depending on how things are happening, our brain might delete stuff and we're not picking it up. So again, having those skills. And then distorting. You're walking down a crowded street, you see a good friend walking the other way and he's looking straight at you. and you wave and you call out, say, hey Fred, how you going? And he looks at you, frowns, and then walks off. What do you think?
He's got dementia.
Well, it could be. That's a good valid answer.
Mad with
He's mad with you. What have I done? You know, it's like that TV show. The guy's going, hey, Scotty, how you going? Scotty. It was a cactus because he hadn't been to Specsavers. You haven't seen that ad? No?
No, very sad.
But this is exactly the thing. It's a similar thing. Our brain makes assumptions because we've got so much information coming in. We've got to be quick to get the data we need. And so there are rules it uses to distort information, and you can be caught up in that. You know, if you're talking to a stakeholder, he's going to frown on his face and think, oh, geez, what have I done? This is going to be a bad meeting. But it's because his wife's just shouted at him down the phone because he forgot to do something before he went to work, or, you know, it had nothing to do with you. But you've got to be able to recognise that. And generalisations. I tried playing golf one day because there was a conversation we had out there. It was no good. I'm no good at golf. I tried it once. You know, we do that all the time as humans. I tried talking to the stakeholder. He wouldn't listen to what I've got to say. It's a waste of time. I'm not going to worry about him anymore. How's that going to go for your project? So again, we can fall into these traps. And so every time you're having a conversation, this process is going on in the background. So it's good. It's important to understand that. As I said, a lot more detail we could go into, but I don't want to bore you too much tonight. But well, I find it really interesting, human behaviour and how these things work. And of course, you've got this going on in your head. Your stakeholder, standing over here, has the same process going on in his head, but your rules and filters are completely different. How the hell do we even bother, talk to each other, right? Then you've got the information going across the line between the two. So, IT based, you've got some form of transmission between the two ends, which is going across, and then, it gets interpreted and goes back. Another thing which makes it even worse, humans think visually. So before we can actually make words and say them, in our brain, in most cases, we will actually have a picture of what we're wanting to say. Even though subconsciously or even consciously you don't see this necessarily, it just happens. But subconsciously, the brain works in pictures, memories of pictures tied together, with the synapses and everything for you to be able to recall. And so we tend to then, we're describing with our words in English what we're seeing in our mind. That then has to be picked up by the other person and translated back into images that they can understand. So they're reinterpreting back. And if you use Google Translate, you go from back and forth, how it changes, and that's exactly how humans work as well.
That was Elon Musk's Neuralink concept. I listened to a long lecture by him, and he said shortening that communications process between human beings is what Neuralink is all about. Saves you thinking of the image, expressing the image, speaking the image, the other interpreting the image and expressing it back.
Yep.
And so the Neuralink thing was shortening all that. That's what that's about.
There's still be the interpretation at the other end, but having it there instantaneously is sort of very powerful. You all would have seen this before, when we talk about communications, what's it made up of? We're talking to someone, our message and meaning, it's only coming, 7% of that is coming from the words. Right? So 93% of our meaning that we're trying to portray to a stakeholder is coming from two other areas. What would they be?
Body language.
Body language, and what's another one?
Tone and tempo.
Tone and tempo. And in fact, you're the educator and you do all this, 38% through your tone and related attributes, and 55% from your body language. And we do this subconsciously. We don't even think about it. But what I'm saying to you, when you start to be more focused and aware as an individual in a conversation about some of these things, you can actually then be more conscious of body language and be able to read that, and you will have far more control and management of the conversation and its outcomes.
Can we see this in successful TED talkers, for example?
Yeah.
When you think of these things consciously, you go to look at several 15-minute or less talks and say the body language of these successful ones with 1 million and 2 million views are different from a very interesting one with 1,500.
Yes, and they're the ones also who've done the training to do a TED talk.
Oh.
So if you're interested in TED Talks here in Canberra, every year they have them here at the Canberra Theatre, and they do take you through training on how to actually present and move your body and where to stand and all that sorts of things. Yeah.
I mean,
And it is amazing.
Sorry, Michael. Logging and I were having a chat earlier about this very thing and saying that how do we pick up on the body language when we're now on Teams? And we're sort of seeing from here up, and we were both sort of saying that, you know, it's so much easier when you're in the office and you can tell if someone's kind of slumped in or whatever and they're not having a great day or whatever. But now that, you know, we're working from home like a 60-40 or a 40-60 and doing so much on Teams, and if it's a technical team, they're not even putting their cameras on. How do we do the body language bit? We can get the tone and the words, you know.
Well, that's it, and it's a great question. And the advantage of Teams and things over a normal phone conversation. But you can actually hear body language. You don't have to see it. I know that sounds weird. But for example, if you're talking to someone on the phone and you stand up and are talking energetically and standing tall, so you're coming across positively on the phone to the other person, and you might be pacing the room as you're talking to someone. Quite often the person at the other end of the phone goes, oh, I've got this urge to stand up. Right? Because subconsciously they pick that up, because it comes through in your voice. You know that if you're sitting slouched in your chair with your feet up on the desk and talking to someone, they can tell that you're sitting subconsciously. They'll get a feeling over the phone that you're not as alert or attentive to them because you're laid back and whatever. Because that body posture also affects our voice cords and our breathing and all those sorts of things as well. So in Teams, definitely, at least you've got facial expressions. You can watch eye movements, which we'll talk about in a sec, and those sorts of things. So you can get clues. It's not as good as a full body, but you can sort of guess how their body is, or whether they're leaning forward, leaning back, sitting off to the side a bit because they've got the leg up or the feet up on a desk or whatever. You can sort of tell a lot of that stuff anyway. I was going to say something, I forgot it. Oh yes, did a bit of an exercise with some other coaches, and we were having a chat after COVID, and of course, you know, Teams and everything has taken off, and this is the way we're doing meetings. And I put forward the idea. I said, well, one thing I've found when I'm on a Teams meeting and I see someone with a false background, I found that I started discounting them because they don't have a real background behind. Subconsciously, I started to feel in a lot of cases, I can't necessarily trust what you're telling me as a teacher or whatever, because I know that's not your background. You're not on a tropical island under a palm tree.
They might be, that's a problem.
Well, no, if they are, and I have to admit that I was working in Libraries ACT, the CIO for Transport Canberra did most of his work down in Batemans Bay at his house down there, sitting out on his back deck, and you'd have a conversation with him.
You didn't have an action bus background?
No. That's only action busters that do that. But yeah, and that was annoying because you basically have to swear at him and say.
Does the same hold true for a blurred background?
No.
So
because it's blurred, you know it's real, but it's just obfuscated.
Okay.
And you sort of accept that more. And we had a conversation about it. We did some tests just to sort of see. And we think that that's definitely something worth researching. It seemed to be that if you're wanting to trust someone who's teaching you or whatever, having a fake background that's obviously fake did sort of just lower that trust. So it took more time to be more attentive and listening, as opposed to it was just, you know, a really messy bookcase, which is what I do when I'm in my study. That sort of stuff in the background. I might blur it if I need to, but in general, I just leave it. And it might be a conversation starter. They go, oh, you've got that really thick book there. What's that about? I might pull it out and go, oh, that's...
The Bible?
No. Well, it's the NLP Bible.
Oh.
Neuro-linguistic program. It's about this thick, and it's got like 300 and something procedures you can do with NLP. But yeah, so definitely. So understanding others. So we've learned about ourselves and human behaviour and how we operate. Now we want to apply it to other people. How do we do that? So why? Why would we want to do that? I probably already said it. Yeah. So if we can understand who we're talking to possibly start to understand what their likes are, their dislikes. And you do this, and you know, if I'm training people to do this, it's very much about learning a bit at a time and building the skills and building your toolkit. You need bits of evidence, because you need lots of evidence to definitely say you are this type of person and I need to talk to you this way. You can't just go on one thing. You know, for example, in body language, some people will say, if you're talking to someone they've got their arms crossed, what does it mean? Defensive, not interested. It's not true. It's a possibility they are, but you need more information to prove whether it is or it isn't.
They're being subtle.
Not really. So when we can build the skills and learn to read other people through their body language, through other things, which we'll talk about now, doesn't that give us a lot of power? Particularly meeting a stakeholder for the first time, we can pick up quickly, maybe they're a detail-focused person, maybe they're a big picture-focused person. You don't want to be giving all the detail to the big picture guy, or vice versa. You know, you want to get them on side, you want them thinking, and the goal is, you want the person you're talking to think, wow, he or she really gets me. They're just like me. Because when that happens, you've got rapport. And what that means is your words become their thoughts. Right? It's like sort of hypnotism in a way, but it's human nature. You know when you're having a conversation with a friend, and you're talking about a topic you both love, and you get goosebumps, and your temperature goes up, and you get excited, you know, really, you know, whatever the topic might be. That's rapport. You can get into that state when you understand the other person and move towards them. Right? And it really helps. Has anyone heard of the golden rule?
No.
It's in the majority of religions.
He who has the gold makes the rules.
Well, there's that one, but that's not in the religion side of things. Although for some, if you're Christian, it's all about gold. The golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Is that the golden rule?
That's called the golden rule.
It's popular.
Is that something you would implement when you're dealing with stakeholders?
Only if it's in the contract.
We're recording this, so there's some great one-liners here. I suggest not. Why? From what I just said previously before putting that up there, what would I not do unto others so they'll do the same unto you? That's very me-centric. I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated. What's that saying to a stakeholder?
You're weak.
Well, yeah, but also,
Yeah,
I have no respect for the way you want to be treated, and I'm assuming you're just like me, which they're not, ever. All right? So, this has been enhanced, and there's another rule that was brought to market, which is being accepted, which is called the, following the theme,
Beige rule?
Silver rule.
it's a step up, it's a platinum rule. So when I talk to you about being sponsors, I'm going to talk about silver package and gold package, but you'll be buying the platinum package, right? Treat others as they want to be treated. And that's our goal as project managers, in making sure we communicate properly with stakeholders and have them communicate back, love us. Always go, Michael's the one, if I want to know what's happening with this project or I need something done, I'm going to talk to him because I know he'll do it, he'll support me. All of that happens, which is where you want to be, because then you're in control. And that's what it's all about, is managing all of these things that are around you as a project manager to bring it to fruition to where you need to be to deliver. So that's important, and understanding the other person and where they come from and how you need to discuss things with them and so on is the platinum rule. So how do we do this? There's a whole range of ways we can pick up clues. Body language we talked about. And it's all sorts of body language. I think, let me have a look. So, eye movements, posture, breathing, they're just three things. Pulse, there's a guy called Milton Erickson, absolute guru in hypnotherapy. Bit of a weird guy. towards the end of his career, he used to go and present and train, but he'd always be in purple silk pyjamas. And then towards the end of his life, he was always in a wheelchair. You can find him on YouTube. And he basically developed this thing called Milton language, which is certain ways of talking to people to get them to do things. He used to build rapport by watching the pulse, either in the person's neck or in their ankle, if they were a lady. And based on that, he could tell by the pulse slowing that he had them in a state of hypnosis and that sort of stuff. So, but he was like a guru. I don't expect you to do that. Eye movement, although you can train yourself, I haven't done it yet. It's a bit creepy as well. Can I just see your ankles? Especially when you're asking guys that. So body language, eye movements. Our eyes are connected directly to the brain. And this is something we can try our hardest, but we cannot stop from happening. When you're talking to someone, their eyes will move as part of them responding to you. So you ask a question, or ask for approval, or ask, is this, what you're thinking? Anything like that that requires a bit of brain process, the eyes will move. And based on that, you can actually tell what they're doing. And we'll look at that on the next slide. And I've got a handout you can take. And I probably won't have time to do an exercise, but I was going to get you to pair up and just do a few questions to each other to see this happen. But posture, sitting up, standing straight, positive energy suggests that you're happy or content. Slouched over, it could be that you're unhappy, that you're tired. All of these sort of things play into your building a image of your stakeholder to sort of go, well, okay, you're obviously stressed at the moment, or you're obviously very tired, you've got other things on your plate. I'll just give you what I need to, or ask you the one or two questions, and I'll leave you to it, and I'll leave, rather than, I want to tell you all about the project, where we're at, and all this detail, and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, the guy's not listening to you, because he's just thinking, I've got to get this report out. And you're wasting my time telling me stuff I don't want to know. Can you send it to me in an email, but they're too nice to say it to you? And then you go away thinking you want a wonderful relationship, and they go, bloody Michael. I wish people would tell me he's coming down the corridor, I'd lock the door, right? That'll happen. And breathing's the same. So if it's fast, shallow breathing, it's more energetic and excited. Slow breathing's more relaxed, etc. Vocabulary, and on the handout as well, is some examples. So you would have heard about learning styles, that we have preferences for visual, auditory, kinesthetic learning. So it's, you need to see things to learn, you need to hear things to learn, or you need to touch and do things to learn. Somewhat true, there's definitely research that says it's all rubbish, but we all have those senses, the same senses in general. I generalise when I make these statements, there's always exceptions. And we do morph. So some of us will be one day quite happy and in general like to see something being done or see the slides to be able to absorb it and learn from it. Some people can't look at the slides, they like to look at their notebook or look to the ground, but they listen and they'll take everything in and learn when they can hear people talking about it. And of course others, they need to actually do something on a keyboard or do something with their hands in some way to have that feeling. And we can use that to learn quickly as well. So Brian Tracy, for example, talks about this. If you don't know Brian Tracy, the American guru, a bit old now, but he's still going. He talks about if you want to learn something quickly, in particular if you're reading a textbook or a course outline, you should be doing something else at the same time. He talks about stimulating your ears by having happy, mellow music, like classical music playing in the background, not loud, nothing with words in it, because that'll interact and cause you not to pick up the words in your book. But something like that is just triggers the auditory senses while you're concentrating on the visual sense. And if you can be exercising or doing something at the same time while walking, you will learn so much quicker. The brain will start to build synapses based on I'm hearing, I'm seeing, and I'm doing, and it does stick. So it's one way of picking things up really quickly when you're studying theory and stuff like that. So that was a complete aside. And then when you learn a bit more about DISC or some of the other classifications you can do of people, you can, by viewing the office, the desk, the home environment, pick up clues which will tell you exactly the sort of person you're dealing with and their preferences. So, for example, a very goal-focused, direct type of person will tend to have trophies in their office of some sort. So, you know, I know a CIO that's been through a couple of places here, and he's always got awards. So his teams have won awards in different categories across the industry. They'll be in his office. You go visit him in his office, and you look at the wall, and you'll see the awards that his teams have won. But they're his teams, right? He's the leader. They're my awards. And then when he leaves to go somewhere else, he wants to take them, and they say, no, this is actually, you've got to stay. He has that discussion every time. You know, the desk also, whether it's cluttered or clean, whether it's really focused and prioritised and all that sorts of stuff, will tell you a bit more about the person. Whether they've got the latest equipment, a photo of their brand new car or their new golf clubs or a holiday home, things like that around, or whether it's photos of the family. All of these will tell you things about the person you're dealing with. Of course, hot desking is an absolute pain because you get to the desk and talk to someone and there's nothing there personal because the next day they'll be somewhere else. But you can still tell by the way they organise their desk. Where's the keyboard, where's their mouse, where's their paper and pen, where the stuff they're doing daily gives you a bit of insight. Eye modalities. So if you're looking at someone full on, you can watch their eyes move. In general, if they move to the right-hand side, they are creating an answer. If they're moving to the left-hand side, they're retrieving an answer. Okay. If it's visual, they'll be looking up. If it's auditory, it'll be looking level. If it's kinesthetic, usually down and to the right. Or my right, your left when you're looking at me. It's confusing. Auditory digital will be down or down to the left. Now, auditory digital is a special category, and we see this all the time in IT or in deep sciences. It's where you go inside your head to process. So someone might ask you a question, you've got to think about it, you go inside your head and you go, blah, 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 okay, here's your answer. That's auditory digital. It's actually inside voice going through a process. And sometimes you might ask a question and they need to go and create something, bring it with something they've already got. How does that feel? Is it correct? Okay, here's your answer. So now, exceptions. Of course, there's always bloody exceptions. Some people are reverse. This is why I say you've got to test everything. Don't just assume the eye movements are telling you one thing. Look for other clues in body language, vocabulary that suggest what their preference is. The reason I'm saying this, if they're constantly looking up, they're a very visual person. If you want to meet them on their level, you don't talk to them as an auditory person. Right? This is all the vocabulary. And as I said, I've got some stuff here as examples that I'll let you have. You would use visual words. So, you know, look, see. Let's have a look at our proposal here. You'll see that this is why we need to do it this way. You know, this will brighten the whole outcome for the project. These sorts of words will register with a visual person. And again, they'll think, wow, you really get me. Just like me. Auditory. So can you tell me how you feel, you know, can you tell me what's wrong at the moment with the specification or whatever it might be? I'd like to hear your view on this. Auditory person will answer that. And they'll use these words. And people use a mix, but there'll be some that are actually used a lot, and that gives you that clue. And kinesthetic is the touchy-feely thing. So it's all, you know, I'm not sure how that feels. I want to see if it feels right, or I want to talk about, I remind myself, because I'm not a kinesthetic person, so I don't use these words. But, you know, cold, hot, anything about feelings. Gut feeling, handle, heavy, pain, rough, smooth, those sorts of things. Okay, questions?
Just on the interpreting, is this more generation specific, particularly with the younger generations that are probably needing an arrow for ADHD in there?
Yeah, but ADHD is just all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's a short-lived phenomenon.
Yeah. It's still there because the eyes are still wired to the brain.
Right.
So even with kids, and I've been doing this with my grandkids, I test it out every now and again. Aha, I know what you are. And you see it. So by the time they're like 5, or even my youngest grandson, who's currently 3, I've already said to his mother, this is what he's going to be when he grows up. He's going to be like this, this, and this. This is what he always. This is why he gets upset, because you don't listen to him when he said, just tell me to shut up. But that's fine. You can't coach family and friends. Remember that, okay? They don't listen to you. My wife never listens to me. She'll say to me, coach me, because I want to understand what's going on here. And you try it and you don't forget it. It just ends in tears for me. But yeah, the kids definitely still, because it's a natural behaviour, and even devices, they can't really get that out of them because they're so hardwired. ADHD, I'll say no, because I coached a guy here who's one of the CEOs of a local not-for-profit. And the first session we had, he says, oh, by the way, I've been diagnosed as ADHD and something other and whatever. And I'm not trained in that, That's not my specialty. This is going to be tough, but it wasn't, because he still did all these things, and we were able to work with him to find ways that we could improve how he worked and move stress from his work and whatever. So it's again, the human behaviour stuff is still there. It's just that there's this higher ramping of energies. Moving on, because I'm running out of time.
That's okay.
Yeah. On this sheet that you get to take, apart from the words, on the other side is the picture about the eyes, and a bit of information and some questions you can try. And I've done this before and had someone did one of my trainings and went home and tested it on their wife. And then came back to me and said, you're right. Basically, they sat down and the wife had come in late from work and basically said, oh, how's your day? And they started to explain, and he burst into laughter. And she goes, I'm telling you about my day. I've had this hard day, and you're laughing at me. He had to explain before he was divorced. But he came back and said that was it. As soon as she started talking, I could see her eyes going back and forth, the creation and all that sort of stuff. And it does work, and you can use it. Right? It takes practice. I recommend watch TV, the news. Look at the politicians at the moment when they get interviewed. And coming into an election, when they're lying through their teeth, you can tell there'll be lots of eye movements to that side. They're constructing answers, which means they really don't know what they're talking about, but they hope you'll go away, right? And you'll see it. And people can't stop it when they're stressed. I had one guy, I did a session once years ago, and he went, it's all bullshit. I can stop my eyes from moving, you won't be able to do it. No, come up. Brought him up the front, put him up facing the rest of the group, and I stood to the side and I started asking some questions, and you betcha, he made sure he stared straight ahead and didn't move those eyes. There was no way I was going to make them move. And just kept asking some questions, got a little bit deeper, asked him a bit more information about one of his answers, bang. The eyes moved. Everyone burst into laughter and he's going, what? He didn't even know. It's just a subconscious thing, and there's so many of those tells that we have that we can use. So when we understand our stakeholder, and we understand their preferences for maybe vocabulary, their mood, how receptive they are, we can then match them and build rapport. And to do that, now rapport is a state of trust and responsiveness where your words become your client's thoughts. That's the really scientific way of talking about it. But it's something we do naturally as humans, or we used to. And it's very important that we want to have outcomes from a conversation that both parties win and we move forward. It's one of what I reckon is probably one of the core skills for a project manager in dealing with stakeholders, whether they're in the team or elsewhere, being able to read them and then talk to them at a level where they actually listen to what you're saying, take on board and contribute, and you have those outcomes that you're after. And it's a skill that's lost. It used to be when we were in the village, it wasn't a problem. We all did that all the time. We're always talking. Matching modalities, so that's the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic in their words and movements and whatever works. Physical mirroring. So one of the things you can do if you're having a conversation with someone new or that's being difficult and not receptive, mirror them. What that means is you act as if you're the mirror to them. They lean forward, come forward towards them. They lean back, go back. You don't have to do it exactly, you just have to do the action to match. It doesn't have to be exact. So if they move right back and put their hand behind their head, you're not going to do exactly the same thing. They'll go, what's going on here? But just by moving back a little bit, subconsciously they pick it up, and it just happens. I had a client who was a psychologist, done all the studies, and one day we were going through a session. I started doing this because I was trying to bring him to the right level that we could talk about something that was an issue. And he stopped and he went, "You're mirroring me." I said, "Yes, I am." He went, "Great." And off we went. But yeah, so because he understood it and why I was doing it, and it was all great. So you got to be careful, not creepy, right? You know, you don't want to turn them away completely. Match their voice. If there's aggression in the room, and you've got a stakeholder who's screaming and shouting, that never happens for any of you on your projects, correct? But on the rare occasion where someone has raised their voice, they're unhappy, and they're talking louder because they're used to getting their way, and you know they might be, you know, complaining about the project team or individuals in the room, whatever it is. If you raise your voice a little bit towards theirs, and then bring your voice down back to normal, they will follow you. These sort of subconsciously the body goes, okay, you're very close to me, and then you come down. It drops their aggravation, and they will come down as well. And then they become more susceptible to having a conversation about the issue and actually coming to a conclusion that's beneficial to all, rather than just ranting and raving. Similarly, if they're not energetic enough and not involved enough, sometimes raising your voice up a little bit with the volume or the pitch or whatever can bring them up. The pitch as well. If you're trying to match someone, get them to think that you're just like them, move towards their pitch. Obviously, if it's a male talking to a female, you're not going to falsetto your voice to try and match exactly, because that comes across as creepy. Or a female trying to match a male, and all of a sudden it was talk low. Same thing. You just need to adjust your pitch in their direction. That's all you need. Match their breathing. And I think match their chunks of information. Which what I'm talking about here is if they're a big picture person, they're talking big picture. Don't give them a detail. You change what you want to say to the big picture. In particular, if they're a very driven person, goal focused, and they're all about getting there quickly in the most efficient way, and they're asking you about the project, they want you just to give you the metrics. You should all know your numbers as project managers, right? The number one thing is you know your numbers in your project. Someone meets you in the corridor on the lift and says, how's the project going? You go, A, B, C, D, done. That's all the information they need. And they love you because you're on top of it. But you've got to know your numbers. You know, where are we at with budget? Where are we at with time? All those sorts of things, but in numbers. So if you're talking to someone in the big picture, give them the high level stuff and then stop. Wait for them to ask you, can you tell me more about that? Then give them the detail. Once you get that permission, they'll listen to what you've got to say. If you dump on them all the detail, they won't. They'll ignore it. They won't even listen to what you said. They'll miss the big picture story, the whole thing. Vice versa. If you know that the person's really into the detail, loves all the process procedure and all the stuff right down to the finest letter, you need to prepare to give them a whole pile of detail, because that's what they'll be looking for. Don't just stop at the big picture. So this is always important to understand that people. Good example, one of my mentors, she was travelling on a plane, international flight back to Australia from New Zealand, I think it was. And she's not into sport at all. Has no interest whatsoever, never has in any sport. Sitting on a plane next to what she thought might have been a football player of some sort. And sat down next to her, and she said hello. And he said hello, opened his paper, put his head in his paper and started reading. And she thought, that was rude. I wanted to find out who you were. Not that I care, but you obviously look like a sports person. I think I've seen you on TV. I just wanted to clarify so I could say to someone, oh, I sat next to so-and-so. And of course didn't get that. So she took her paper out and started reading. And what she did, she held the paper the same way he did. When he turned the page, she turned the page. When he folded the newspaper, she folded exactly the same. Then she matched his breathing.
KGB.
Right? When he was exact breathing. Within 5 minutes of doing that, he put his paper down and turned to her and said, hi, my name's so-and-so. What's yours? And they had a conversation. And he had a book, and he signed the book, and he gave it to her, and all that sort of rubbish as well. And then she gave it away to someone else because she didn't care. But this is the power of this process that you can use. Now, Of course, you can use it for evil, but I'm talking about using it for good in supporting you having better relationships with the people you have to deal with. Questions? Because, common experiences, this is the old small talk thing. People say, don't do the small talk, but having a quick conversation, if you know something about the stakeholder, they said to you they're going to do something on the weekend, even if it's completely like they said they were going to go play golf at some new golf course or whatever, and you hate golf, the first thing you probably want to do is actually say, how'd your weekend go with the golf? Was it a good course? Whatever, whatever. They'll tell you blah, 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 and you go, yeah. But it's important for that rapport building. It just gives them oh, you're interested in what I do. You're interested in me, and then the other stuff has far more power. Oh, it's another one. Yes, this is an important one. I forgot I had 7. I said 5. Watch for behavioural changes, because we know even ourselves, if we're happy, we'll behave a certain way, but when we're stressed, we might change our behaviour, become short-tempered. We might have other things happen. So what tends to happen when those situations on the periphery, so very angry or very tired or whatever, we can fall back on different energies, different types of behaviour, which is not normally what we are. You need to be agile. Aha, that was an intended pun. In your dealing with the stakeholders, you need to be aware of those behaviours, because it might be completely opposite to what you've been observing before, and you might need to change. They might change from a visual language to a more kinesthetic feels type language. Don't keep going with the visual. You need to swap and match them and bring them back. Deal with it that way. So that's very important. Now I think, so that was the 3 steps. Understanding yourself. When you understand yourself, you can understand others a lot more. Understanding your stakeholders and who you're dealing with, looking for the clues, building those skills to be able to see what they're on about, and building rapport, matching, mirroring, doing things. If you go for coffee, here's another one. You go down to a cafe to catch up with a stakeholder and you're going to have a coffee. If you really want to build rapport, particularly with a difficult stakeholder, you will order and drink exactly the same thing they do, even if you hate it. You know, we've got to sacrifice sometimes to build these relationships.
I don't use real milk even.
Well, obviously you're not going to endanger yourself if you're allergic to milk. You could, but if they had a latte, you get a soy latte or an almond latte or something like that.
Light soy goat latte.
Yeah, but it'd still be a latte, so there's a match. You would put your cup on the
very
table
delicate issue, I think.
the same way that they put their cup. When they take a drink, you take a drink.
So if they go a short black, you don't go a long black. You get
Correct.
same size.
You try and do similar size.
Yeah.
Michael, just on that point, let's just say if you're doing that, but later if they discover that you really don't like that option, would it not break their trust then?
Not necessarily. There's other things you can do. These are one of many things. But if you're really, really wanting to build this relationship with someone, and you want to get them on your side, they need to feel that you're almost the twin.
It does say losers drink soy.
Yeah, or
You end up building more relationships, different people. Keep changing.
that's right. Or that drink is a why bother?
Oh yes, I've been so damaged by that era.
Coffee is just a medium.
It's just a medium.
With that, I'll say thank you and open up for any other discussion or questions.